Hello. This is another video where I'll only really be talking about one episode because whether or not it originally aired as two episodes, the first two episodes of season two of Wishbone are a single unit, an adaptation of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which they call Halloween Hound: The Legend of Creepy Collars, and it's one where I don't really remember if I saw it uh, when it originally aired, because I've seen it very often in the past couple of years, looking it up on YouTube and watching it after I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, after we went to Sleepy Hollow. Um, just seeing, in past Halloweens, I would watch all the Halloweeny monster episodes of Wishbone. So I don't remember exactly, but I definitely don't remember that new title sequence. And I don't know if it will continue in the smaller episodes. There are only 8 left of season 2, and then there's an hour and a half long Wishbone episode. Um, but it has a new title sequence, more colorful, more flashy, perhaps more kid friendly. I didn't like it as much, but I'm not a kid. But maybe it'll grow on me. Like, I've seen the other one over and over and over and over again, and I don't remember this one from previous viewings of The Legend of Creepy Collars. So maybe when it's broken up into 2 episodes, maybe it has the old one, maybe this was for the supersized, I don't know. But in any case, I don't like it as much, but it's fine. Uh, and yeah, and so the interesting thing about this one, I don't know if, I don't know why, but there were shots of, I guess, downtown Oakdale, um, Wishbone trotting along all alone. I don't like, when I see dogs without leashes in parks and around. I don't like it, but I'm fine with Wishbone because Wishbone can talk in a way, but overall I think it sends a bad message. Perhaps the reason I'm seeing so many dogs without leashes is because an entire generation grew up watching Wishbone, who is rarely on a leash. Um, but there's downtown shots, and it's a nice looking. It's not like wide shots of the town, but a very very clean sidewalk. And the reason we head downtown is so that we can. Well, initially Wishbone is just wandering along for some reason all by himself, and then he somehow senses that Ellen has dropped one of the Halloween cookies that she is baking, and before it hits the ground, he shoots back and catches it in his mouth. So that's probably the only reason for that. But later on, Joe, who is starting basketball season, um, wants to go get a new basketball, and he goes to this basketball shop that is downtown. And so we walk downtown with him a little bit. And when he enters the store, I notice the doors are wide open, and the store is full of course, basketballs, tennis balls, all kind of things that roll. And it doesn't seem like a good idea that, and it's a slightly windy fall day, Halloween day, and it just doesn't seem like a good idea that a store full of things that roll on a windy day has its doors wide open. Especially as we see Wishbone dives into the tennis balls and then creates a mess of tennis balls. But apparently they don't roll out the door, or at least the guy who owns the store is not concerned. It turns out the guy who owns the store runs a uh, scavenger hunt every Halloween, or maybe just this Halloween. I didn't catch that exactly. Um, and that is the plot going forward. That parallels with the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. He invites Joe to sign up to be on a team, but Joe is reluctant because apparently bad things have happened on past Halloweens, dating back to an encounter with some what he takes to be ghostly spirit in a haunted house um, in the days before Wishbone was a full-grown dog. But we find that out later. But it turns out that Sam has signed Joe up, apparently without asking, to be part of her team for the scavenger hunt. Um, and so there you go. And the 4 main kids, Sam, Joe, David, and Demont, Joe and David, their voices are noticeably changed, and they're taller and slightly different shaped heads. Um, and Sam and Demont's, their voices have not changed. Demont's was already pretty low, and Sam's just doesn't sound that different. She might be a little taller though, but it's kind of like watching the second Harry Potter movie, the way that the voices changed there. Um, and it's Halloween, so they dress up. Sam is an adventurer. She's got a pith helmet and khakis. Um, David is a mad scientist. He's got kind of green tinted, neon green tinted glasses, and he's whitened his hair. And Joe, seems to be wearing camouflage. He's got kind of a floppy hat, so I guess he's maybe an army person, but it seems kind of half-hearted, which makes sense if he's not that into Halloween. He thinks that it's bad luck. It doesn't help that a black cat keeps crossing their path. So yeah, in the meantime, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is about a superstitious school teacher who moves to Tarrytown, New York, and starts flirting with the Van Tassel, Katrina Van Tassel, the heiress, the heir to the wealthiest family in town. And then, of course, there's Brahm, who thought that he was going to be the one to court her, but now he's got a challenge, and everybody in town wants to court her, and the adaptation makes a point of that. So yeah, that's how both of the stories open. Now the scavenger hunt, and this might be why I returned to this episode a lot more than others, reminds me of everything that I loved about Halloween as a kid. The kind of cheap-ish haunted house special effects, all lights and smoke machines. The not realist, not well, realistic is but the you see jack-o'-lanterns. Some of them look just like, if you can see that, they just look like that. That is the basic jack-o'-lantern. These days, people they turn jack-o'-lanterns into art. They do the Mona Lisa on a jack-o'-lantern, but the jack-o'-lantern that's not the Mona Lisa, that's just the square teeth and the triangle eyes and the triangle nose, and a plastic, even less realistic looking version of that. That's my Halloween. Sheets for ghosts. That's Halloween when I was a kid, and all I needed. And it's in a way what I chase when I go looking for, when I go around and look at people's Halloween decorations. And this episode has a lot of that because it's kids at Halloween time, and especially the Wanda sets up a fortune teller thing at her house, but there's also all of the challenges that the scavenger hunters need to solve are very old-fashioned Halloweeny. So that's what I get out of the episode these days. And also just the costumes are not trying to precisely recreate the Joker from The Dark Knight. It's just generic explorer in Sam's case, or generic mad scientist in David's case. So I really like that element and that the feel of the episode, and the shots of the Sleepy Hollow that they do, the dramatization. Those are very nice too, and I think that I think this is a particularly good episode for Mr. Larry Brantley as the voice of Wishbone. And the dog actually kind of seems older too. I guess dogs age faster, but I noticed two things about the dog. It looked kind of older, and also it looked kind of like a frog. Sometimes, especially when he's like sitting up and looking up, so that there's less of a defined chin and a neck, and it's just like that, and because he's got huge eyes. Those are just two things I noticed about the dog. But the clues in the scavenger hunt come in little plastic pumpkins, which again reminds me of the toys in Happy Meals around Halloween time when I was a kid. So there's a lot in this episode that I love, just aesthetically. It's been a while since I read the actual book, so I don't know if singing lessons is one of the things that Ichabod offers to Van Tassel. There's another dogs wearing costumes crack, but in the last proper episode of Wishbone, there was a big deal about dogs wearing costumes, so it's kind of a recycled joke in that sense. Still fun, I guess. Let's see. Oh, we find out that Wanda owns the Oakdale Chronicle. I don't know if I knew that before, if that's been mentioned, and also that Sam's dad owns Pepper Pete's, which is another thing I don't know if I knew prior to this episode. There's let's see, At some point, I wrote this down. So at some point, someone's making a vroom vroom kind of sound, and Wishbone just does some kind of cute movement. I don't remember the details of that, but I wrote it down. So it's something to look for. Sam is determined to keep the team together. I wrote so at one point Wishbone chases the cat. Wishbone chases this black cat a lot. I guess in the last season, the 40 episodes of the last season, Wishbone didn't chase cats enough. Chased a rat and a couple of dogs. So they make up for that. But at one point, they, like the trio, the scavenger hunt team, they're ahead. But then, and Demont, of course, is on another team with his cousin, whose friend was abducted by aliens, and he shushes his cousin before we find out the details of the aliens. But it's because the cousin's wearing a costume, says, "This is how aliens really look. My friend was abducted," and we never find out. So that kid seemed to have some interesting things to say, but Demont was constantly, as Demont will, shutting him up. But Wishbone chasing the cat delays them, and Demont gets ahead. But he's not ultimately smart enough to figure things out for himself, so they kind of all come to a head at the last challenge in the aforementioned haunted house, the Murphy house, I guess it's called, and he resorts to some nasty tricks, which mostly involve locking them into closets, including Wishbone, who ultimately gets him back. So there's the Van Tassels have a big party, and at one point, we're back in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and the Headless Horseman comes up, and Ichabod. There are many versions of Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The one I've seen perhaps more than the Wishbone version is the Tim Burton Johnny Depp version, in which Ichabod is a skeptic and a scientist and doesn't want to believe in the Headless Horseman, which everyone says the Headless Horseman is the problem. Find the Headless Horseman, and he doesn't want to believe that it is the Headless Horseman. And I've seen that a lot. So I got that. I got it in my head also the fact that he's a teacher, that he was a skeptic. But he is, in the book, very superstitious. And so Brom and some of the other townsfolk start to kind of coax him with stories of the Headless Horseman to freak him out. And, of course, the climax of that story is not entirely known. Ichabod is chased by something that resembles the Headless Horseman, that seems to be the Headless Horseman, but we don't find out what happens to Ichabod, and we don't find out if it was the Headless Horseman or Brom made up. In this one, it kind of suggests, one of the other townspeople says to Brom kind of suggestively, we haven't had an appearance from the Headless Horseman, as though it's Brom's job to make the Headless Horseman appear as a yearly treat for the townspeople. So I kind of got that. I don't know if that's in the book. I don't think it is, but it was an interesting thing. So we have the haunted house, and I said all of that. Oh, I wrote down when Demont starts locking people in closets, what does he think is going to happen? Does he think he's going to win, and then he's going to get to keep the prize, which is a $100 gift certificate to the sports store, when it's found out that he locked his competitors in the closets in the haunted house? But he's not necessarily thinking about that. He just wants to win. His cousin does not go into the haunted house. And this is where we find out that Joe's aversion to Halloween kind of started with an experience with the haunted house. And what he decides was probably that black cat making sounds around the haunted house that freaked Joe out. And he said, oh, it was just a cat. The show gives us a little hint that it might have been something else, which is another little, this might be a slightly magical world that Wishbone exists in, where he's not even, as we found out, the only dog that can talk telepathically. I also wrote down, is Demont dressed as a gangster? He's just, I don't know if it's intended, but he's wearing like a black shirt and a fedora, and it just seemed like a half-hearted Halloween costume, because maybe in order to do the scavenger hunt, he has to wear a costume. Let's see. Oh, and the post-show bit is just mostly about how they created the effects of the haunted house, and haunted houses and like I said, Halloween decorations are a big part of what even just looking at. Haven't been to many haunted houses, but it's another thing that I love about the Halloween season, when houses suddenly have flickering lights behind the windows where normally there would only be curtains or whatever, or steady lights while people are reading or watching TV. Um, so that was a thing that I liked, and and as usual they just built the facade of the house, did interiors elsewhere, but just built the facade out in the woods and lit it in an eerie way to get the effect. So a very interesting bit. So that is that for the Legend of Creepy Callers. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to say. Great episode that I really like. I rewatch it and the Frankenstein and Phantom episodes most Halloweens. So the next pair of episodes, episodes 3 and 4 of season 2, one of them is based on Henry IV, Part 1, which is a Shakespeare play that I will not read. I have not read, I haven't seen, I'm not going to read it. But The Courtship of Miles Standish is a poem, a narrative poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and it's a long poem, but I might go for it because even a long poem is relatively short, unlike a Shakespearean play. So until then, let's wag another tail.